Millionaire woman marries for power, but her husband turns the tables on their wedding night. Victoria Sterling had built her empire one calculated move at a time. At 34, she commanded a tech conglomerate worth $800 million. From her glass tower overlooking Manhattan's financial district, her corner office, with its floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist decor, reflected her personality: perfectly cold, precise, and utterly dominant. Every morning, Victoria reviewed her empire like a general surveying a battlefield. Sterling Tech had absorbed 17 companies in the past 5 years, each acquisition bringing her closer to her ultimate goal: becoming the most powerful woman in American business. But there was one obstacle she couldn't overcome: through hostile takeovers or corporate maneuvering. The old boys club that still controlled the defense contracting sector. That's where David Chun entered her story. She first noticed him at a Pentagon procurement conference in Washington, D.C. While other attendees networked aggressively, David sat quietly in the back row, taking notes on a simple notepad. He wore an unremarkable gray suit and wire-rimmed glasses that made him look more like a junior analyst than someone with clearance for classified defense projects. Victoria's research team delivered his file within hours. David Chun, 36, former MIT PhD in aerospace engineering, currently working as a mid-level project coordinator at Raytheon. His security clearance was impressive: top secret with sensitive compartmented information access. More importantly, he had connections throughout the defense establishment that money couldn't buy. What struck Victoria wasn't his credentials, but his apparent lack of ambition. In an industry where everyone clawed for advancement, David seemed content with his modest salary and suburban Virginia lifestyle. He drove a 7-year-old Honda Civic, lived in a rental townhouse, and his biggest extravagance appeared to be his monthly donations to animal shelters. Perfect. Victoria orchestrated their first meeting with the precision of a military operation. She arranged to be seated next to him at a technology symposium, timing her arrival to coincide with the coffee break. When she accidentally spilled her latte on his presentation notes, David's reaction confirmed everything she suspected about him. Instead of anger or frustration, he simply smiled and offered to help clean up the mess. His hands were steady, his voice calm, and his eyes, Victoria noticed with satisfaction, held no trace of recognition despite her face being on the cover of Forbes just 3 months earlier. Over the following weeks, Victoria deployed a carefully crafted campaign of seduction. She attended the same conferences, frequented the coffee shop near his office, and even joined his weekend hiking group in the Blue Ridge Mountains. To David, their encounters seemed like fortunate coincidences. To Victoria, they were strategic strikes in a larger campaign. David proved to be surprisingly intelligent company. During their hikes, he spoke passionately about renewable energy applications in aerospace, the ethics of artificial intelligence, and his concerns about increasing corporate influence in government contracts. Victoria found herself genuinely engaged by his perspectives, even when they contradicted her own business practices. More importantly, David's connections ran deeper than her initial intelligence suggested. He had college roommates at the CIA, former colleagues at NASA, and mentors throughout the Pentagon's inner circles. These weren't just professional relationships. They were built on genuine respect and shared experiences that went back decades. After 3 months of careful courtship, Victoria made her move. She invited David to dinner at Le Bernardin, one of New York's most exclusive restaurants. The evening was perfect: intimate lighting, flawless service, and David's obvious amazement at the opulent surroundings. Victoria had expected to guide the conversation toward their future together, but David surprised her by taking the initiative. Between the main course and dessert, he reached across the table and took her hand. His proposal was everything Victoria hadn't known she wanted: simple, heartfelt, and completely genuine. David spoke about building a life together, supporting each other's dreams, and creating something meaningful beyond their individual careers. When he presented a modest diamond ring clearly purchased with his limited savings, Victoria felt an unexpected flutter of emotion. She said yes, of course. The ring fit perfectly, and David's kiss tasted like victory. The engagement period passed in a whirlwind of planning and positioning. Victoria's wedding planner transformed the Plaza Hotel's ballroom into a showcase of understated elegance. The guest list read like a directory of American power senators, tech moguls, defense contractors, and media executives. Each invitation was strategically placed to maximize her future influence. David seemed overwhelmed by the scale of the celebration, but he adapted with good humor. He insisted on inviting his modest circle of friends and family, including his elderly parents who flew in from San Francisco's Chinatown. Victoria found their simple dignity charming, even touching. The bachelor and bachelorette parties followed predictable scripts. Victoria's celebration at a private club in the Hamptons was attended by female executives who understood exactly what she was doing and approved entirely. David's gathering was a quiet dinner with his college friends at a steakhouse in Arlington, precisely the kind of low-key affair she expected from someone of his background. 3 days before the wedding, Victoria's private investigator delivered his final report on David. Nothing had changed, no hidden assets, no secret relationships, no indication that he understood the true nature of their arrangement. The man was exactly what he appeared to be, a decent, intelligent, and utterly naive engineer who had fallen in love with her public persona. Victoria smiled as she filed the report away. In 72 hours, she would have everything she needed to break into the defense contracting sector. David's connections, combined with her capital and business acumen, would create an unstoppable force in American industry. The wedding day arrived with September sunshine streaming through the plaza's crystal windows. Victoria's dress was a masterpiece of Italian silk and French lace, designed to project both elegance and power. As she walked down the aisle on her father's arm, she surveyed her assembled guests like a general reviewing her troops. David waited at the altar in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, his face radiant with genuine happiness. During the ceremony, his eyes never left hers, and when he spoke his vows, Victoria detected no trace of calculation or hidden agenda. His love appeared completely authentic, which made what she was doing almost too easy. The reception unfolded exactly as Victoria had planned. Defense contractors mingled with tech executives, political figures shared drinks with media moguls, and everyone seemed eager to establish connections with the new Mrs. Chun. Victoria worked the room with practiced efficiency, cementing relationships that would prove valuable in the months ahead. David played his part perfectly, charming her guests with his modesty and genuine interest in their work. Victoria watched with satisfaction as several key figures, including a Pentagon procurement director and the CEO of Lockheed Martin, took obvious liking to her new husband. As the evening wound down, Victoria felt the intoxicating rush of complete victory. Every element of her plan had fallen into place with mechanical precision. In a few months, once she had established herself in David's professional circle, she could begin the delicate process of either marginalizing him or, if necessary, arranging a quietly profitable divorce. The last guests departed just after midnight, leaving Victoria and David alone in their penthouse suite overlooking Central Park. David loosened his bow tie and collapsed into an armchair, smiling at her with exhausted contentment. The moment felt perfect for beginning the next phase of their relationship, one where she would gradually assume control of both his career prospects and his personal life. Victoria approached him with what she believed to be the confident stride of a woman who had just secured her ultimate prize. But as she drew closer, something in David's expression made her pause. His smile remained warm and loving, but his eyes held a different quality, a depth of understanding that hadn't been there during the ceremony. David reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small device that Victoria immediately recognized as a professional-grade recording device. Her blood turned to ice as he placed it gently on the coffee table between them. When David finally spoke, his voice carried none of the uncertain deference she had grown accustomed to. Instead, it held the quiet authority of someone who had been playing a much deeper game than she ever imagined. David's transformation was so complete that Victoria wondered if she had ever really seen him at all. The uncertain engineer who had fumbled with his vows just hours earlier was gone, replaced by someone whose presence commanded the room despite his relaxed posture. The recording device sat between them like a loaded weapon. Victoria's mind raced through the implications while maintaining her composed exterior. In her world, the first person to show weakness lost everything. David rose from his chair with fluid grace and moved to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. The city lights reflected off the glass, creating a backdrop that seemed almost theatrical in its perfection. When he began to speak, his voice carried the measured cadence of someone delivering a presentation to hostile shareholders. The story he told transformed everything Victoria thought she knew about their relationship. David Chun was not a mid-level engineer content with mediocrity. He was a deep cover operative for a joint CIA Pentagon task force investigating corporate espionage in the defense sector. His unremarkable career at Raytheon was carefully constructed cover, maintained through classified cooperation between the intelligence community and defense contractors. For the past 3 years, David had been tracking a sophisticated operation that used romantic relationships to gain access to classified information and procurement processes. The investigation had identified 17 cases where ambitious executives had targeted government employees with security clearances, manipulating them into marriages or affairs that compromised national security. Victoria's throat constricted as David continued his explanation. Her own intelligence network, the private investigators and corporate researchers she had used to build profiles of potential targets, had been monitored by federal agencies for months. Every background check she had commissioned, every strategic encounter she had arranged, had been documented and analyzed. The coffee shop meetings, the hiking group, even David's circle of friends, all of it had been orchestrated by his handlers to create the perfect opportunity for Victoria to reveal her intentions. The modest lifestyle, the apparent lack of ambition, the genuine emotional responses. David was a consummate professional delivering a performance worthy of Academy recognition. But the most devastating revelation was yet to come. The recording device on the table contained more than just evidence of Victoria's manipulation. It held conversations with her business associates, planning sessions with her legal team, and detailed discussions of her strategy to leverage David's connections for Sterling Tech's expansion into defense contracting. Under federal law, Victoria's actions constituted multiple felonies: conspiracy to commit espionage, attempted theft of classified information, and violation of numerous national security statutes. The evidence was comprehensive enough to guarantee conviction, with sentences that would effectively end both her freedom and her business empire. David returned to his chair, his expression now showing something that might have been genuine regret. He explained that his original mission had been simply to document her activities and build a case for prosecution. The relationship was meant to last only long enough to gather evidence of her illegal intentions. But something unexpected had happened during their months together. Despite the deception on both sides, despite the manipulation and strategic positioning, David had developed genuine feelings for Victoria. Her intelligence, her drive, her absolute refusal to accept limitations. He found himself genuinely drawn to qualities that made her both dangerous and remarkable. The hiking trips, the quiet dinners, the conversations about technology and ethics, those moments had been real, at least from his perspective. Even while maintaining his cover, David had discovered aspects of Victoria that transcended her ruthless business persona. This created a problem that his handlers hadn't anticipated. David was supposed to maintain emotional distance, to treat Victoria as nothing more than a target to be neutralized. Instead, he found himself hoping that she might choose a different path, that her obvious capabilities could be redirected toward legal enterprises. The wedding itself had been David's idea, not his supervisor's. His handlers had wanted to arrest Victoria months earlier, but David had argued for giving her one final opportunity to abandon her illegal schemes. The ceremony, the public commitment, the symbolic joining of their lives, David had hoped it might inspire Victoria to reconsider her priorities. But Victoria's behavior during the reception had confirmed his worst fears. He watched her work the room, identifying targets, building relationships that she clearly intended to exploit. Even on their wedding day, she was unable to set aside her predatory instincts. The recording device between them contained one final conversation, Victoria's phone call to her head of acquisitions, made during the reception while David danced with her mother. In that call, Victoria had outlined her timeline for gaining access to David's classified projects and using that information to position Sterling Tech for lucrative defense contracts. David paused his narrative and looked directly into Victoria's eyes. For the first time since the revelation began, she saw something that looked like the man she thought she had married: vulnerable, conflicted, and genuinely pained by the situation they found themselves in. He made her an offer that was both generous and devastating in its implications. David's handlers were prepared to offer Victoria complete immunity from prosecution in exchange for her cooperation in exposing the broader network of corporate espionage they were investigating. Her intelligence network, her business connections, her understanding of how ambitious executives operated, all of it would be invaluable in identifying and stopping similar operations. The alternative was immediate arrest, federal charges that would make headlines across every business publication in America, and the complete destruction of everything Victoria had built. Sterling Tech would be seized as evidence, her assets frozen, and her reputation destroyed so thoroughly that she would never work in business again. But David's offer came with conditions that cut to the heart of who Victoria believed herself to be. She would have to abandon Sterling Tech, relocate to a secure location, and spend the next several years working under federal supervision to identify and trap other executives engaged in similar schemes. Her empire, her independence, her carefully constructed identity, all of it would disappear. Victoria listened to David's proposal with the calculating mind that had built her fortune. She analyzed angles, considered alternatives, and searched for leverage that might shift the balance of power back in her direction. But every strategic option led to the same conclusion: David held all the cards. The most crushing realization was how completely she had underestimated him. Victoria prided herself on reading people, on identifying their weaknesses and motivations. Yet David had played a role so convincing that she never questioned his authenticity. He had matched her manipulation with manipulation of his own, but his was backed by the full resources of the federal government. As dawn broke over Central Park, casting long shadows across their penthouse suite, Victoria found herself facing the most difficult decision of her life. She could maintain her defiance, protect her empire, and face certain destruction. Or she could accept David's offer, abandon everything she had built, and hope to find meaning in a completely different kind of existence. David waited patiently as Victoria weighed her options. His expression suggested that he genuinely hoped she would choose cooperation, that perhaps their strange relationship might evolve into something resembling partnership. Even under such extraordinary circumstances, the recording device continued to sit between them, a tangible reminder of how thoroughly the balance of power had shifted. Victoria Sterling, who had never been anyone's victim, who had built her fortune by exploiting others' weaknesses, now found herself completely at the mercy of a man she had intended to use and discard. Outside their window, New York City was waking up to another day of commerce and competition. Victoria's empire would continue operating, at least for now, but she was no longer its master. The woman who had married for power had discovered that true power belonged to those who understood the game being played, and David Chun had been playing a much more sophisticated game than she ever imagined. As the sun climbed higher over Manhattan, Victoria Sterling faced the first genuinely uncertain moment of her adult life, knowing that whatever choice she made would fundamentally alter not just her future, but her understanding of who she had always believed herself to be, the perfect. Marriage had indeed become a high-stakes game where only one could come out on top, but the victor was not the one anyone, including Victoria herself, had expected.
Thank you for watching this story unfold with us here on M&A The Story Unfolds. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new tale. We'd love to know where you're watching from. Leave a comment below and tell us what part of the world you're joining us from. Your support means everything. See you in the next story.